Rachel Grimm, and welcome to the podcast With All Your Mind. I'm here to help us understand the Bible with cultural and historical context, linguistic info, and other cool stuff. Enjoy. All right, guys, welcome back. This is Rachel, and this is With All Your Mind. And this is the last of our episodes on the series of genre. So we're going to have one more episode after this one. And I told you guys that I would read my translation of Home for a Bunny in Biblical Hebrew. And I'm debating how I want to do that because there's not going to be any visual. So I might include some other people to help me with that. So that will be our next episode, and that will be the last for this season. And I'll give you some more news and updates on when is the next time I'm likely to do some more podcast episodes and what's next for me. And so that will be next. And this one will be our last one on genre. So we're doing the last major genre in the New Testament, and that is apocalyptic literature, because we had to finish out with the last book of the Bible, right? And that is Revelation. And Revelation is our one example in the Bible of apocalyptic literature. Now, I first wanted to ask you, what do you think of when you think of the word apocalypse or apocalyptic? I always think of disaster or end of the world movies or really horrible war movies, and horrible in the sense of devastation. And so I wrote down a list of movies for you to help us get in the mindset for apocalypse. And so some of these I have not seen. I just know their general reputation. And one of those is Mad Max. I've never seen that, but I know it's an apocalyptic type movie. Some more that I haven't seen in a while. Children of Men. It's a movie set in, I think, apocalyptic London, where there are no more kids in the world. The movie I Am Legend with Will Smith, where he's the only man left in the world. One that I've never seen, and it just has the name in it, so I don't really know anything about it, but I think of it because of the name, Apocalyptico. Don't know anything about that one. 2012, the year that the world was kind of ending. Interstellar, where the world is kind of dying and they have to get off of Earth. Waterworld, where there is no land left. Greenland, and World War Z, or any movie that has zombies, is basically an apocalyptic type movie. So generally speaking, when we talk about apocalyptic type stuff, it's anything where it's, oh no, everything is horrible and it's all about survival, right? Survival type movies where the whole world or a whole section of the world is trying to survive. And it's a pretty decent picture of what apocalyptic literature is about. But did you know that there was a whole genre of literature in the couple hundred years before Jesus where there was lots of apocalyptic literature? It was a genre in the time period before Jesus. Now, there's different sections of history that happen right before Jesus, right? So there's about 400 years between the last book of the Old Testament and the first book of the New Testament, Malachi to Matthew. It's about 400 years in there. And we call that period the intertestamental period. And it's kind of this time period that you don't hear much about from a Christian perspective, because there are no Christian books from that time period, nothing in the Bible from that time period. So it can kind of feel like just a blank slate, like nothing interesting happened in there, when that is so far from the truth. So many things happened in there that it was just it felt apocalyptic to Jews. We'll talk about that intertestamental time period a little bit later, but let's go back to Revelation. My ESV study Bible I'm going back there again, had a great intro for Revelation, because the first line of Revelation is the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him to show his servants the things that must soon take place. Revelation is not a Hebrew word, and it's not even a Greek word. It's a Latin word for the Greek word, and I'm going to say this wrong, apocalypsis. Revelation is our one example in the Bible of apocalyptic literature, but it also draws from other genres. It draws from prophetic literature, it draws from poetry, It's a couple of different things. It's a blurry picture of those other genres. But let's first talk about what it is and then how it's different from other things, okay? Apocalyptic literature from the time between Malachi and Jesus is different from prophetic literature in that, and here's some key features, different from prophetic literature in that there are usually only two kinds of people involved. There's a good, holy, suffering people and the evil, bad oppressors. That's it. There's no in between, and there's no calls for repentance. It's just the good people and the bad people. The good, holy, suffering people and the bad, evil oppressors. And in that old Jewish perspective, there was also no hope of redemption for the world, and it was just all doomed to destruction. They took features of prophecy with visions with lots of symbolism and used pen names. This is a key feature. They used pen names like Enoch and Moses to make their apocalyptic literature feel more ancient and important. So all of this doom and gloom of BC apocalyptic literature was probably due to the oppression of the Jewish people during this time period. This is after the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. They rebuild, as you hear about in Ezra and Nehemiah, but the temple was not as nice, not as fancy, not as big, not as impressive as the old temple. And the people didn't have the autonomy. There was no nation of Israel anymore. They were ruled by the Greeks. And then they were ruled by, first by the Babylonians, and then the Greeks, and then the Romans. And it was just one thing after another. And the Greeks and the Romans and other countries were fighting over their land. And it just felt like they were just lost in the mix. And there was also this huge event. You've heard about the Maccabees, right? And the holiday of Hanukkah. Hanukkah comes from this intertestamental time period from, I think it's about 200 BC or 180 BC. I might be getting that entirely wrong. I should have looked it up first. But basically, it is when the Jews were trying to take back the temple, and they took it back, but they didn't have supplies to keep it running in a sanctified way. And they prayed, and they lit the menorah everywhere, and it magically, it supernaturally stayed lit even though they never refilled the oil in the menorah. And so it is celebrated that the oil never ran out. And so Hanukkah today is a celebration of oil. You eat everything that's been fried in oil. That's why sufganiyot, donuts, are a very popular Hanukkah food in Israel. And that's why latkes and other types of Hanukkah foods are popular with Ashkenazi Jews. They're fried in oil. So anything with oil is a staple for Hanukkah. Anyway, they had to take back the temple, and I'm going to mess this stuff up. I am not good with intertestamental history. It is a tough time period to study. There's so many names in there, and they're really hard names. But basically, this is also the time period when somebody came in and sacrificed a pig on the altar in the temple. And it was just horrible stuff going on. Like, if you had lived in this time period, you would have felt like everything was crazy. And it might have felt really, really hopeless. And I could imagine some apocalyptic literature being written in this time period. Okay? So there was lots of doom and gloom to be had. But probably some of the most famous examples of Jewish apocalyptic literature are the books of Enoch. You may not have heard of these. There are lots of others. A lot of them are called the Apocalypse of, and they give these pen names, the Apocalypse of Abraham, the Apocalypse of Adam and Moses and Gabriel and Zerubbabel. I've never read any of it, but the book of Jude in the New Testament quotes from the book of Enoch, or at least uses some similar lines. But here's the interesting thing. We're getting back to apocalyptic literature in the Bible, Revelation. John's revelation is different in many ways from the apocalyptic literature from before Jesus. With Jesus fulfilling prophecy from the Old Testament in many, many ways, and we have episodes about this, season 1, episode 7 and 9. So Jesus fulfilled lots of prophecy from the Old Testament. God gave John a different perspective on what the end would look like. Before Jesus, it was just doom and gloom. Nothing is happening right. Prophecies are not being fulfilled. Where's the Messiah? We're just doomed. Everything is horrible, right? We just got to wait for God to redeem us and just wipe out the rest of these bad guys. That's all they had. After Jesus, prophecies fulfilled, and it's just a much different perspective on what would the end be. So here are some of the similarities between Revelation and Old Testament or intertestamental apocalyptic literature, okay? Visions and symbolism, they both had that. They both had oppressed people of God. They were also, and this is an important one to differentiate it from prophetic literature, they were also primarily written rather than oral. Prophetic stuff, if you think about Isaiah and Jeremiah, Haggai, all of those guys, they were oral. They were giving their prophecies out loud. Apocalyptic literature is written. It's literature. So that's a similarity between intertestamental, apocalyptic literature, and Revelation. And the last similarity, the holy minority are waiting for God's deliverance and for the persecutors to be punished. So all of those things, similarities, very similar to apocalyptic literature before Jesus. But here are some key differences, how Revelation is different from all of those other things. John gives his name. He does not attribute the apocalypse to someone ancient like Adam or Moses. Another one, God gives correction to some churches and encouragement and future hope to everyone. It's not just doom and gloom. The third one, Revelation is not pessimistic like Old Testament apocalypses because Jesus already had the victory. Remember the scene from with the scroll in Revelation where somebody asks, I think it's an angel asks, who is able to open the scroll? And nobody was able to open the scroll. And it starts out sounding horrible, no hope. And then Jesus comes and opens the scroll. He is able because he already has the power and the authority. And number 4, the persecutors, the bad people, the evil oppressors in Revelation can still repent and be saved. They're not eternally doomed and they're just bad and wrong and can never change. There's always hope for change in the Bible, all the way up through even the most apocalyptic literature in the Bible. So one thing that I should mention is that books like Daniel and Ezekiel have apocalyptic visions. They have apocalyptic parts, but they are not wholly classified as apocalyptic literature. And some for the key reasons that I mentioned. They are oral rather than written. And it's just part of their books, not the whole book. Revelation, the whole thing, is the revelation, the apocalypse, the revealing. Okay? If you want to watch something, the Bible Project has a great video on the book of Revelation. And I have it linked in the show notes. It's a 2-parter. I have both links. It was made in 2021. They say, and this is a quote that I've always kept in my head, and I can never remember it completely, so I looked it up in the video. They say that Christian apocalyptic literature and much of prophecy, here it is, shows God's heavenly perspective on history and current events so that the present can be viewed in light of history's final outcome. I like to sum it up as apocalyptic literature and prophecy are God's heavenly perspective on earthly events. So it's all about perspective. It's to help us have appropriate perspective. All right. So I hope the next time you read Revelation, you don't, I don't know. When I come to Revelation, I'm preemptively irritated because there has been so much opinion and banging fists about it and people claiming to know that they know all about it and understand everything about it. I get irritated quickly when even trying to think about Revelation. But reading it for myself, I have enjoyed it because Jesus gives hope. Jesus gives encouragement. And the first chapter says it. We're blessed to read it. And one of the reasons that we're blessed to read it is that you can see it all the way through. is that God is in control from start to finish. It's not that everything is unraveling like in apocalyptic movies where the whole world is just unraveling and you don't know what the end is going to be. And maybe some people will be saved, but not many, and they're just might be miserable. No, in Revelation, we see it an entirely different way where the people have a very bright, shining hope in heaven with God who already has full control and has never lost control. All right. So I hope you look forward to reading Revelation next time, whenever that is for you. And I hope you can keep in mind how apocalyptic literature in the Bible is not apocalyptic in terms of the whole rest of the world. All right. You guys have a great one, and I'll talk to you again next time. Bye.